So before I mount this servo horn on this servo, I want to make sure that the servo is centered, so I'm going to go do that. Okay, this Cloudbuster ESC doesn't like that it's not connected to a receiver, but I've got my battery, and the battery's hooked up to the ESC. The ESC is powering on this little servo adjuster, and then from there I've got our servo. So here it is. I put the horn on there, and it looks like it's going to line up great. So what I can do is click the button. It's on manual right now, so if I click it, it goes to neutral. So that's the neutral, and that's what I want. I want this horn hanging over the like the open side of this servo, just like this. And when I go to neutral, that's where it is. That means it's centered. So now I can get my screws in our servo. To match the stock screw that came with this, we're going to go with a 5mm. I've put a little bit of Loctite right here on the tip, not much, and I've gone with a button head as well so that it doesn't stick out too far. So here's our M2. It is an M2 by 8. Again, just a little bit of blue Loctite on there. We'll put that in there like that. Rather than using the screws that came with it, I've gone with stainless because I don't want to have to worry about them rusting, as it's going to be in a lot of water, going to be in a lot of snow. So here we have an M3 by 5, and then here we have an M2 by 8. Now we'll go ahead and get this installed. You want to make sure that this horn sets like this so that as it swings, it has room to do so here. A good way to remember is the opening on the rack for the head of the screw faces toward the front of the frame. You can see there's the back side, there's the front. Something to show you is with one of these servo shim adapters, or the little 3mm ones, the rack, I've noticed when the servo is bolted down, the rack rubs on the servo horn. And I don't know if you can see that in there, but there is friction. So along with this servo adapter, this is the 3mm, this is a 1mm. I'm going to put that underneath the 3mm, take my servo, rest it in there, and now you can see that that rack slides freely. And as I look in there, there's probably 1mm of space between the horn and the rack. Before we mount the servo, we want to get a M3 screw in the end of this horn. I'm using a button head, and what I'm going to do is put just a little bit of blue Loctite on it up toward the head, because I don't want this to come out or back out. So here it is. We're going to go ahead and screw it in. I want that outermost hole on the horn. I need to go get my socket for my MIP tools. I left it upstairs. All right, so we're going to snug that up. And you can see here why you do a button head. It just barely has enough clearance. And then what we'll do is take, so we've got our rack in there. Here's our shim. Going to put it down. And then we've got the adapter. So then we'll take our servo, set it in there, line up the rack so that that screw drops right down into that rack. There we go. And there's our servo. And that is a M3 by 12mm. You don't want it to be pushing on the rack. This one's perfect. I tried a 14 and it was way too long. This is my 2.5. Just gonna clean up these holes. Perfect. As I put that in there, I can feel it bottom out. So I'm not gonna need a screw that's very long. The holes in the back go through this whole section, but these ones right here only leave probably about 4 millimeters. Okay, so 12 millimeters, there we go. You know what I'm going to do too, looking at those holes, I'm going to use a washer. There we go. Yeah, having a washer on there, that's a great idea. Those holes on that servo are pretty big. So start on that side, it's not quite snugged. And then we'll go here. And there we go. We got our rack centered, got our servo ready to go. This is awesome. Okay, with our servo and rack installed, we are ready to install the motor. Here's the motor I've chosen to go with. It's one of the crawler systems from Hobbywing. It's a 1800 kV. I have never used this motor before. Typically I go with like a 2400 kV, and this was their 2-in-1 system to take up less space and allow for hopefully a bigger battery. So we'll see how it works. I'm thinking that I will probably go with a 20-tooth pinion instead of a 16. Awesome, there we go. Now you can see this is a lower ESC mount. It actually moves your ESC down lower, but because I'm using this 2-in-1 motor, I might end up printing a new plate that doesn't sit lower to give it a little more room so that those wires can go through there. But for the time being, we're going to mount them up, even off to the side a little bit probably. So here's my motor plate. This one is carbon fiber. I will put a link. I would recommend getting one of these and not even printing for heat purposes, for strength, etc. But we'll go ahead and get the motor mounted to this plate and then mounted to our frame. One thing you're going to want to do is put this nut in here like this. And then be sure to put these two nuts in as well, because when we put the motor mount on there, or the motor support like this, those are going to be blocked. Now, I'm going to use this motor support, and because of that, I am going to drill through. There goes one of the nuts. Hand drill so that the screws go through these holes easily. They're M2 screws. And when I haven't done the hand drill before, sometimes these edges, they're so small and thin that they've split. And because the screw is going into this is a 1.5 millimeter bit. To mount the motor to the mount, I'm going to go with 8 millimeter M3 screws with a washer as well. So here's the motor mount. Line it up. Be about right there. Right on. All right, and with that mounted, we can now run the screws through the motor mount into the nuts. And I'm also going to go with button head M3 by 8 millimeters. The manual says 10, but the issue that I've run into is over on this side. When I put that motor support bracket right here, the 10 millimeter screws are a little bit too long. Sometimes down in there that nut wasn't seated, so I just used this long M3 screw to grab it and then pull it back into place. Okay, so we've got our motor mounted, all set. Now we will move on to the motor support. Now what you'll see here is I have the two. This is for the 36 millimeter motors. This is for the 42 can motors. For some reason in the past, the 36 does not fit under the motor that I have built. So I just do the 42, but we'll try it today and we'll see. Nope, it's not gonna work. And I don't know why. Maybe somebody can give me some better insights as to why it does or does not work. Perfect. Now this one slides right under here. I'm just going to take these, they're longer, they're M3s. I just grabbed them, but I'm actually going to put one right here so that it holds that nut. And then I'm going to put one under here as well. Sorry, you don't get to see it because if I tip it over, it's going to fall. So now I'm going to screw this. You could do something shorter. I probably might. These are just two that I quickly grabbed. But now what we can do is take this, ready to go, and we'll get us some M2 hardware and mount it up. What I have here are two M2 by 5 millimeter screws. I'm going to line that up and go right in there, just like this. Get that snug. You don't want to go too much. There is not a whole lot for these screws to hold on to. That's good right there. Awesome. Okay, there we go. We've got our motor in, we've got our motor mount. Remember, these two screws are just holding those nuts so that they don't pop out. I've had this pop out before, and it is a pain to try and get back in there. Also had this one pop out, and it's a pain too. So, okay, I've got the motor installed. I'm ready to do this Gemini frame brace, and I'm also going to do the shock mounts. I wanted to show you quickly some differences. So these are the G-Made shock mounts. That these ones are in the 2025 folder. I can't remember what folder these are from, but you'll notice that this piece of this bracket actually overlaps over that hole, and the designer ended up shifting and cutting out some of that support so that you can get a button head screw down in there, or even a socket head screw. But the button head goes in nicely, and it's nice that then the shock, when it's rotating, doesn't hit any of the head of that screw. You'll also notice that on this edge here, the geometry is a little bit different. Let's see if we can get, there we go. You can just see it's a little bit of a different looking piece, but this is the key. That hole is open, that one is not. So we're going to mount these. I'm going to take my 3mm hand drill and just open these, and I'm doing that because the M3 screw is going to go through these shock mounts, through the brace, into the, through the frame and then into the frame brace. Right here, we're going to leave this at 2.5mm, but we'll open this one up. Probably should have done that before I pressed the nuts in, but there we go. So open this hole. And then I believe these, yeah, they're just pretty much ready to go. All right. And that one's actually good to go too. That lower one's good to go there. So here's the 12s. This top screw and this bottom screw are both M3 by 12mm. And there is our frame ready to go.